Hi, this is Ulrich von Tolstat, competitive rapier fencer in the SCA. Welcome to Von Tolstat Fight Club.
Welcome to the first episode of Von Tolstat Fight Club. This episode is kicking off a series of instructional videos aimed at making you a better fencer and spreading fencing knowledge throughout the community. The techniques discussed in this series are based primarily on Italian fencing styles of the late 16th and early 17th century, with heavy emphasis on Fabris and the Vienna Anonymous as direct sources. Big disclaimer: the techniques we discussed are not the only techniques out there, but they are extremely effective and will help build a great fencing foundation for beginners or take more experienced fighters to new levels. Each video will focus on one specific technique or area of focus with the goal of being easy to follow and concise. We'll come back and make episodes that focus more heavily on guards, stance, grip, footwork, measure, etc. But today I'm going to give you a tool that helps you focus on the most important thing of all: not getting hit in a fight. So for the purposes of today, we'll assume that you already know the four basic guards of prima, seconda, terza, and quarta, which we'll also cover more in depth in the future. Today's episode is all about closing off probably the most common area of attack, the high inside line. To begin with, your high inside line is everything above your guard to the left of your arm if you're right-handed. The directions are reversed if you are in a left-handed guard, as demonstrated here. There are three other lines of attack in single rapier, but in the interest of keeping everything simple and focused, we're only covering the high inside line of attack today. When I first started rapier fencing, I was told to always keep my point aimed at the center of my opponent, whether that be their face or chest or throat, and when I needed to parry or close a line, all I had to do was move my forte, or strong portion of my blade, with the point still aimed in the center of my opponent. For example, to parry the high inside line, I just roll my forte into quarta to close the line. The problem is these positions, with the point still centered on the opponent and moving the forte, don't actually close the line, as we'll demonstrate here. As you can see, the attack is still getting through. In fact, I've seen others do this and come to the conclusion that parries with the sword just don't work for them, and they abandon sword defense completely. Here's why that method of line closure doesn't actually close the line. The point and arm are in the wrong place. To get a proper line closure, you have to cross your point over the top of the opponent's sword. On the inside line, this is done in a guard that is between terza and quarta, with the true edge aimed down at about a 45-degree angle toward your opponent's blade. The point is aimed up and slightly outside of presence, just outside the opponent's shoulder. In other words, the point is by necessity not pointed at the opponent, but over their sword. Fabris and other fencing masters discuss this principle when they say that the sword is strongest on the side to which it points. If you want to close off the high inside line, your point needs to be pointing to the high inside line to be strong enough to close it fully. The smaller and more subtle an angle you can make this and still have the line closed, the better. We're not trying to aim the point way over the sword, just enough to close the line, which is usually just pointed over or outside of their sword shoulder. Another thing to note here is the arm. When doing this, your arm should be more extended, not fully straight, but more extended than not. Out forward with a slight bend of the elbow. You'd never want a fully locked elbow as it limits mobility. Your forte is in the line of their attack, ready to intercept it. You have to let your forte do the work of deflecting, as shown. If you try to use the weak of your blade, the attack will still come through. Your hilt should be just underneath their blade, and your point should be up and angled over their blade, out of presence, crossed over their sword. So here's what we aren't doing. We're not sweeping our forte. We aren't pressing hard out against our opponent's blade or shoving it aside. We are extended out at an angle with the point at the described position. We are not using a lot of pressure at all, as pressure is easier to take advantage of, as we'll see in future episodes. We are simply placing our sword against our opponent's blade. Instead of a sideways motion, we're making more of a forward angled motion. Once we're able to close the line properly, we can successfully parry an opponent's attack on that line. If my sword is in a different position and I notice that the opponent is attacking down the high inside line, I can quickly place my sword there and close and parry as shown here. To practice this technique, grab a partner and have them stand on guard with an attack aimed at the high inside line. Walk slowly toward them as you close the line, extending your arm to place the forte forward and pointing your point up and over across their blade, slightly out of presence. Now, simply walk forward. If you do it right, their blade will go out of presence and you will not be hit. Do not worry about hitting them, worry about not being hit. As you get more comfortable with the action, have your opponent throw slow attacks down the high inside line as you close and parry it with the proper blade position. Remember to keep your forte forward on their double A and your point up and over their sword, with the hand positioned between terza and quarta. As you get more comfortable, you can increase speed and resistance to ensure that you are truly and fully closing the line. Again, do not focus on hitting the opponent while you're learning this. Focus only on closing the line and not being hit. In the coming episodes, we will discuss how to close the high outside line of attack, and then we'll start putting those things together in combat. Your homework is to work on closing the high inside line and get comfortable with it so that you can build up to the coming lessons. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time on Von Tolstat Fight Club.